Today's session will consider the structure and content of your 5th chapter, which deals with the roles and relationships that you developed whilst undertaking your project. In order to reflect on your roles and relationships, you'll need to refer to a range of sources. On the screen I've provided an initial 3 sources which you can access, which are available via the library, and this will help you broadly reflect on firstly your role as a consultant within the project that you carried out for your client, issues around the skills and preferences that you've got in terms of your personal skills, personal preferences, and how they may have affected the way in which you, or influenced the way in which you have approached certain activities within your project. Thirdly, looking at how your team developed over the course of the project, and we'll consider the different stages of team working as we go through this. Fourthly, we'll consider how you manage relationships within the team and out with the team, and look at some of the issues about how you can go about dealing with conflict. There are, of course, other texts that you can use, but those texts which I just referred to on the previous slide are just 3 which you can access, but there are other resources available, and which I would expect you to use, rather than not just those 3 resources I've indicated to you. In relation to the first area that we touched upon in the previous slide, Philip Wickham identifies 5 different roles that a consultant can undertake. Firstly, the role about supplementing is where they perhaps have the skill set within the organisation, but they don't have the capacity to actually carry out the work that they want the consultant to do. So this might be the fact that there's they've got limited staff and they're looking to bring a consultant in to do something that they want doing, but they don't have enough time within their current staff to do this, even though they may have the skills base. The second area is slightly different. It's where the consultant brings in additional skills to complement the skills that are within the team. So, for example, it might be the example that I provided on the slide. It might be to do with market research that have some kind of influence on terms of being able to carry out some market research for the organisation, which the organisation don't have the skills or the skills. Or perhaps the capacity to be able to carry that out. So slightly different from the first role in that this is actually complementing or adding to the skills base within the organisation. The third role that Wickham refers to is a differentiating role, where the consultant is used to help develop new roles and structures within a organisation. So this tends to happen, or has happened in many cases, within small organisations who are looking to grow, and they bring in consultants to help them develop kind of new roles and structures so that they're able to grow and develop their business. The fourth role is where the consultant will be working within the organisation to help restructure and redefine existing roles and relationships. Slightly different from the third role, which I've just referred to, and that this will be where a consultant will probably integrate themselves within the organisation for a specified period of time. The 5th area, or 5th role that a consultant can take, is looking at how they can enhance the overall effectiveness of the management team within an organisation. So this might be that it's they use a consultant in a kind of training way to actually develop new skills, either technical or digital skills, or perhaps in areas to do with leadership and motivation. So they're looking to move into the organisation and help them enhance particular aspects of the skill set within the organisation itself. For most of you who've been carrying out projects with clients, you'll be actually carrying out either a supplementing or complementing role. In many ways, the kind of complementing role where you've got some new skills, especially kind of research skills, which you're able to apply to the organisation who you'll be working with. Of course, this is just one kind of model of the kind of roles of consultants, and there are, if you look at some of the other texts which look at management consultant, like the Biggs book, David Biggs, which which we've referred to in previous sessions, or looking at authors such as Edgar Schein, who talks about process consulting rather than expert consulting. They are other texts which you may want to consider. But the Wickham framework provides you with a simple and straightforward framework for you to actually reflect on the kind of role that you undertook within the organisation that you worked in. This model of skills and preferences we looked at in the personal development module, and it's in the book by Wetton and Cameron. And the reason for pointing you back towards this is that these kind of skills and preferences that you have will influence how you approach matters within, or how you did approach matters within the project that you're carrying out for your client or what you're planning to carry out. And by looking at these, this will allow you to actually consider how these have had an influence on how you actually dealt with issues and matters within the different stages of the project. This model of team working was originally developed by Tuckman many years ago, but many other organisational behaviourists have actually looked at similar kind of models of team working. The first stage is to do with how a team first forms and how people get to know each other and identify initial roles and tasks. And this is a kind of starting point when you're wondering who's going to take on what roles, and you have a discussion around this and start to establish initial roles and tasks within the team. The second stage is when it becomes clear that perhaps those initial roles that you established and that you decided to work within, people begin to realise that perhaps they're not suited for those initial roles and that there needs to be some adjustment to the role that people do. So this is the kind of stage which we call about storming. It suggests that things get a little bit difficult and stormy, but it's not. It's a means of actually having some healthy kind of discussion about what kind of roles are most suitable to individuals within the team. The third stage of team working or team development that Tuckman talks about is how, having gone through this storming stage, that people begin to understand about who's doing what and how people are going to behave, whether that's attending meetings on a regular basis and being prompt in terms of arriving at those meetings, and just understanding what it is that the team rules are and how they're going to be applied. The fourth stage, following on from this norming stage, where rules are set and people agree on how to behave and how to cooperate, is when the team becomes organised and starts to work effectively, and this is known as the performing stage. So this is not many teams will always get to this stage. So it may be that within the group or team that you're working in, you probably got to the storming and norming stage, and the performing stage came somewhere later on within the project itself. It may be that because the project never really got fully underway, that you only got to a stage where you started to establish initial roles and tasks, and you never got beyond the kind of first stage. But this will vary very much within each team. And so it's not the case that you all have to work the way through each one of these stages. Many of you will not get to the final stage in this kind of team working stage of development. There are a number of reasons why teams do not work effectively together. The first reason is focused on managing the social processes within the team, and these are key to maintaining a kind of healthy atmosphere within the team itself. And these consist of the kind of following kinds of areas about how you actually provide constructive feedback to individuals in the team, and you actually put forward ideas, you ensure that people are involved, you support people, and when you respond you look to give constructive feedback and acknowledge people's feelings. and have a means by which you're able to handle conflict in a supportive way, which is constructive and helps to create a healthy atmosphere within the team. The second reason why teams don't work effectively is where there are actually problems within the team, and it may be that some people within the team are quite anxious about their ability to actually deliver the task that they're required to do, and this kind of doubt can spread across the team, and people who normally are confident can actually get wrapped up in this kind of anxiety and doubt about their ability to actually deliver what they've planned to deliver for the organisation. Another area in terms of team problems, when individuals in the team are disinclined to question if the team are taking the correct action. The kind of sometimes referred to as groupthink as well as teamthink, where people just go along with the flow and don't think about whether the actions they're taking is the correct. It's just that everybody can actually agree on a course of action to take, even if one or two individuals think that that is not the right thing to do. So that's two of the kind of team problems. The third one is when people have what's referred to quite often as hidden agendas, where their personal interests take over from what are the best interests of the team. And this can be found in many, many organisations where teams are working, certainly in terms of these kind of hidden agendas can hijack what are good teamwork and team effectiveness. Moving on from this, we need to understand how we manage conflict and how this can occur. Conflict can arise from a range of issues. Firstly, it could be just to do with personal differences between individuals within a team, and these personal differences may be something which are difficult to overcome. Secondly, it may be that there's a lack of clarity in terms of information or communication within the team, so people misunderstand what someone's actually talking about, and this kind of lack of information or lack of clarity in terms of communication can be can cause conflict at times within teams. Again, on a third area is where people have expectations and beliefs and certain personal values which may differ from other members of the team, and this can be a source of conflict where people's belief system are very different between different members of the team itself. In addition, it can be a stressful environment that people are operating in and working in, and where there's a great deal of stress, that can, as we mentioned on the previous slide, this can cause anxiety, and this is where being able to manage relationships within the kind of stressful environment is key. And as we move into the next slide, we'll see the kind of choices that we have in dealing with these things. People have a choice really of dealing with conflict between a kind of hard, determined approach and a softer, more cooperative approach. And we'll look at this on the next slide where we've got a kind of 2x2 matrix, and I'll move on to this in a moment. This 2x2 matrix illustrates the options available where we look at people's ability to or need to assert their own needs or not assert their own needs on one dimension. On the second dimension, it's how people can be cooperative in meeting others' needs or be uncooperative in meeting others' needs. And this results in kind of 4 different styles of how we handle conflict. a determined style, a compromising style, an avoiding style. These different styles of handling problems can be broken down into the determined style, which really is where people really don't want to cooperate. They want to get their own way, even if it means getting people to admit that they're at fault. And this should be used when there is no alternative. And having a determined style of handling problems is one style of conflict management when you really feel that your particular choice has merit and others don't. The second kind of style of handling problems is when you don't handle the problem, you don't handle the conflict, you avoid the problem of resolving differences that you face, and so you're non-assertive in meeting your own needs, and you're uncooperative in meeting other people's needs, so you actually avoid the situation. And many of us do this when we've got difficult choices, or we're in difficult situations. We take on an avoiding style of handling conflict. The third approach is where somebody is very accommodating or bountiful in terms of the non-assertive in meeting their own needs and very cooperative in helping to meet other people's needs. And this can be quite a useful strategy where the outcome of the conflict doesn't really have any impact on you. It's quite trivial, the issue that there's conflict over. By accepting the other person's view, you seem to be very accommodating, but also, it's a good way of managing relationships in areas where the issue relating to you is quite trivial. The fourth kind of compromising style is where neither party gets completely their own way, but both sets of needs are met in some way. And so this kind of compromise approach is where you perhaps want to maintain a good working relationship with individuals, and so there has to be some kind of give and take in terms of how you actually deal with matters. So to summarise, really, this chapter is really about looking at your role as a consultant and understanding what your skills and preferences are, and looking at the kind of roles and relationships that you developed within the team, but some of the roles and relationships that you develop with your client as well. Didn't mention this, didn't pick this up in too much detail earlier on, but certainly in part of looking at your roles and relationships, you need to look at the roles and relationships that you had with your client and any other stakeholders who were linked into that. So these models that we've looked at today are just some models that can be used to reflect on the roles and relationships in your project. So the roles relate to your role as a consultant, but the role that you took within the team, and the relationships that you need to reflect on relate to the relationships within your team and with team members, but also with your client and related individuals. And remember, each of your experiences will be very different. So you may need to focus on more of a particular aspect of some of the areas considered today. And I would expect that to be the case, especially for those of you who've had difficulty in actually completing all of your projects. But you've still got a great deal of matters to reflect on in terms of how relationships were developed and how the roles that you plan to undertake, how they were played out in reality. So use the kind of initial text that I gave you in the second slide today, but look at related texts and articles that link to those particular areas. There are many others which are relevant other than those three main texts, and I would expect those of you who are going to be looking to do extremely well and look at kind of getting distinction on the dissertation to actually go beyond those three core texts that I referred to early on in the presentation today. Next time we'll be looking at issues to do with personal development, and we'll consider how you actually deal with this. So I'll be looking to give feedback on chapters that you're submitting this week within the next 10 days or so, and hope to speak to you in another couple of weeks.